Welcome to Innovation Leadership. I'm Jess Larson. On this episode, we get to have Lucio Iannone. He's from the venture capital arm of Bayer, the $30 billion pharmaceutical company. He grew up in Italy, did his PhD in the UK at Imperial College. These days, he's in Boston doing mega deals and has a unique perspective on corporate venture capital in life sciences and biotech, and a very interesting individual. I feel like we're lucky to have you, Lucio. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be on your podcast.
So let's start with understanding how Leaps is a little bit of a different type of approach to corporate venture capital, and maybe if you could give people a sense of like the kinds of deals you're doing and the size of some of the deals you've done.
Yes. So Leaps really started around 8 years ago. The idea was really to foster innovation within the Bayer in the US, the Bayer ecosystem. But the idea was to do something different than the standard corporate VC. So not going through the usual pipeline filling, so an asset that can be very close to the company need, but more to have a jump start on a potential therapeutic area that was not at the moment of interest for our pharma division. Of course, Leaps invests also in the agriculture and consumer health. I lead the team on the therapeutic side and the biotech side. And the idea was really to go big or go home. And the first investment were actually around 200 million each. We did some J venture with Versant Ventures called Blue Rock that then was acquired by Bayer. And this is a clear example. Bayer, before acquiring Blue Rock, didn't have expertise in cell therapy. Acquiring Blue Rock allowed them to have first the know-how and the skills, and also to establish them as a potential cell therapy. And right now, Blue Rock is in clinical trials with pretty good results so far. So this is a clear example. We had another few of those. And slowly through the year, we of course amplify a little bit the message of Leaps, of cutting through innovation and really at the edge of the latest potential treatment that can be also a cure. And now we're moving more towards a smaller type of investment with the 10 to 20 million, and make sure that we have different bets in different therapeutic areas.
So Lucio, in that story with Blue Rock, how much did they raise total, and then what was the sale price disclosed?
No.
Okay.
But the company was acquired for 1 billion. I cannot disclose the details of the shares price, but yeah, the 1 billion was 1 billion acquisition.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Can you talk about this idea of having the freedom to be allowed to invest in things that aren't going to go to Bayer, and how that is less common but has opened up new opportunities for you?
Yeah, it's less common, but it's actually becoming a practice for many corporate VC, at least the one that have large capital to deploy. For example, we know that we have over 45 companies in our portfolio between crop science, agriculture, and consumer health, plus the pharma side, right? So we don't expect Bayer to buy all of them. And we actually welcome potential strategic investor to come in with us to create some good competitive environment within the board. We usually take board seat, and we never say no to any of our other corporate VCs such as Pfizer or Sanofi. We have several investments with them. So the beauty is that the opportunity is that you can act as a strategic VC when needed, when the company, the HQ shows some real interest, but you can also act as a financial investor and make sure that we return some capital to the fund that will be potentially deployed again for new investment. So it's a win-win situation. Bayer has the opportunity to see new asset and new data without actually owning a major ownership in the company. While for us is the beauty of doing investment in several different fields. We have done the investment in autoimmune oncology, regenerative medicine, genetic disease. So it gives you that large view of the biotech market. I think is essential for any investor to have.
Yeah. When you count up all the capital that Leaps has deployed, the VC version there, Bayer, do you have a sense of how much that is total so far?
We are a little bit over 1.5 billion
Yeah.
So generally, we have around 300 million a year to invest for new company, and but also for taking care of our current portfolio company. And how we split that is basically on every year needs of each company. We have reserves for each company we invest in up to IPO. We usually participate to IPO, but we jump out of the board, so we're not going to be in contact with the company anymore. Um, the real problem is becoming which deal we do, because now we have such a large portfolio that most of the new investment we see, there is always some kind of overlap. So now the bar is really high, and it makes it a little bit difficult to do a new investment without overlapping with something that we already have in our portfolio. So this is becoming the challenge of the last few years. When we did so many investment, we got some exit. Of course, the IPO market was not really great, but some company were at the stage to go public, so they had to go. We're waiting for those companies to show the real data and and gain some value.
Yeah. When you think about these lessons you've learned over your career, both, not just on the PhD side back in your school days, but the other venture capital you've done and sitting on these boards and being a part of deploying 1.5 billion, what's one of the lessons that has turned into a principle for you that is like a core thing that you feel like runs through how you decide what you are and are not going to deploy into? What's maybe one or two or three of those core principles for you?
Yeah, no, before going to that, basically our process is pretty standardized. So when we look at a company, we look at the potential therapeutic area. If there is actually a curative, if the standard of care is already pretty high, that won't be something we look at. If it's high unmet medical need, then it's something we look at. So the first is, there is need of a new drug in this space. The second one is the science reasonable. It makes sense for what we know as today. Because most of these investments, you invest with an idea on a paper on mice data, and you have no idea in humans if it's gonna work. So what you need to get is this, if works, big if, is gonna make a change in life of patients. And by the way, this is a very selfish thing, because one day I'm gonna be a patient. So I want this potential treatment to be on the market. Then we look at something I learned along the way, the syndicate. So who is coming with us, who is putting money together with us, and not just money, also brain power. So there are different investments we did in the beginning where we were the big investors and some smaller investors were around. And when it's time of crisis, guess who is going to be asked to put more money into the company? So it's always us. So we adjust that, and now we always invest with a strong syndicate. So new investors and new funds are also pretty good, but has to be combined with some big name. For example, we invest a lot with Arch, we invest a lot with Vida. We did investment with deep pocket investor that in moment of crisis, for example, the company cannot fundraise because investors are not really deploying capital. We don't want to be the only one to take the lead. We want someone with us. We want a partner in this company. So this is one of the key lessons. And the other one is the role of the CEO. So sometimes we invest in a lot of founder CEO, first time CEO, and most of them work well. Some others, they need to grow with the company, and sometimes they don't grow at the pace that is supposed to happen. So we need to have this conversation pretty early on and say, for now, you are in charge. But if things change, we want you to know that, something might change also for you. And of course, we value your scientific skills, but at one point, the company needs another set of CEO, another skill set that you don't have it yet, but you might acquire. Sometimes you acquire in 3 years, the company is ready in 2. So there is this year gap we need to work on. So the two big lessons I learned is the one you put your money together with is important. So partnering the syndicates is really important. And the other one is this CEO capable of growing the company? And this is something you learn on the way. But those are the two big lessons. We got burned a few times to learn that.
When you think about this concept of how a lot of people from outside the industry say things like biotech is just a black box. That's too complicated. I don't invest there, right? Um, it's unfortunate because so often those very same people who have no idea how to invent a self-driving car are happy to invest, or who don't actually know how to create an LLM are happy to invest in AI, right? And there seems to be this idea around biotech and some of the life sciences investments where um, this persuasive idea, like pervasive concept that it's just, oh, it's too complicated, I'll never understand it, so I'm not even going to try, has kept so many people out of the space. And yet, when something comes along like an Ozempic, all of a sudden people go, well, maybe I should start to learn, right?
Yeah.
So I think part of that is on this is just my opinion. I want to see if you agree. I think part of that is on investors if they're not coming from the space, they're not really trying. And I think a lot of that comes from the scientists and CEOs and other investors in the space who, like the thing about like SpaceX or something, right? When Elon talks about having a rocket that can re-land, he doesn't use a bunch of obscure physics terms in that sentence, right? He talks in a way that like my teenagers can understand, even though there's some pretty intense physics. And like when he talks about how it's made, he's not constantly like telling us the scientific name of the new alloy that they invented for the such and such that no one knows what that word means. He says, we created new alloys that can handle it or something, right?
Yeah.
So part of what I'm trying to do with this series is get more experts to bring things down to like the level that Elon Musk talks about, or Steve Jobs would talk about on stage about how they made something work, right?
Yeah.
When you think about some of the basic principles of biotech that would make it more simple, what's a version of biotech investing that my teenagers can understand? Thinking about the industry on a whole as like, what are we here to do? Get science out of a research lab into a company that can de-risk it enough that the clinical trials prove a pharma should buy it or it should go public. That's like Jess's like, kindergarten version. But how would you say it better?
I don't know if I would say it better. I can definitely tell you one big difference between potential Tesla, Microsoft. There is an end product that is totally in control of the CEO of the company, on the board, or the management, right? In our case, I think the first trick is to explain the science as basic as possible. So, for example, there is this disease, let's say Ozempic, and
tell us one of the last deals you did that you announced.
I don't know if we can announce that one. Let me see which one we announced. So, for example, we did a tyrosine. Let's do an oncology one that it's sure. Much easier, right? So the oncology one, first we need to explain that there are different type of cancer. It's not like one drug will save cancer, will cure cancer. There's no such a thing. Each cancer is different. Each mutation is different for each patient. So right now there is this big wave of precision oncology that goes through specific mutation that one patient might have and another patient don't. So first thing is to explain the science correctly. So what we're going to do, for example, there is a company called DECA based in Maryland. And this company is creating cytokine that are basically standard molecule in your body that react to something as a potential inflammation. The inflammation is needed for your immune system to fight whatever is the pathogen. In this case, might be a cancer cell. The problem is that those ones are pretty toxic because if you dose in the wrong way, you might kill someone before cancer does. So this company found a way to have some efficacy in killing cell cancer, but without the toxicity related to it. So we invest in this company, highly scientifically makes total sense. So the first thing to do is explain the science. So what kind of cancer are you going to say? So for example, kidney cancer, is very prone to have an immune reaction. So you might want to go for this type of cancer first. Is whole cancer? For now, we don't know yet, but we know that certain type of cancer are going to react better than others. So once you explain to a potential investor the idea of we're going to try to save one specific set of patients first, and then we can open up to other patients. Now, the immune system usually works like this. There is a pathogen, there is an immune reaction. They try to kill the pathogen. You won't feel too well, some fever, but at the end of the day, you might, if the immune system wins the fight, cancer is gone, or at least is reduced. The problem is when you overdose this one, they are very toxic. You might get killed. So this company came with a solution. We have a way that is patented to give you the effect of the immune system, but without the immune reaction the cytokine storm that can kill people. Now, at that point, what we have mouse data, we have non-human primate data. Do we know actually what happened in human? No, we don't. We can expect, based on those data, what is going to happen into human. So the translation from whatever we have done before to human is the critical part. And that's the big difference between, a manufacturer company or a service provider company. We are not totally in control of what's going to happen next. What is going to happen next is based on human data. We inject patients and we will see. There is a clever way to do this, and is like be precise of who comes in your clinical trial. It's not everyone. It's a specific set of patients. We were talking about cancer, specific set of cancer patients that will go into this clinical trial because we know that they have high probability to respond. If we go well on this one, then we need to expand to a phase 2 study where we see first is safe, phase 1, phase 2, there is some efficacy. Are we shrinking the tumor? Is actually working? If that one works, then we can open up to different type of cancer. So as you can see, all this process is not up to me as a good investor or a board member. It's not really up to the CEO. It's really mitigating potential risks. When it works, you're looking at 10 to 12 to 20x in return when it works. So it's high risk, high rate of failure. But clever people, much clever than me, they design the clinical trial in a way that can give you a quick answer and understand if actually it's going to work before you get huge expenses for clinical trial. Still, it's high cost, but the win is a big win because you don't only make money out of it, but you also make some potential therapeutic drugs that might help people that are suffering from, in this case, cancer. But same thing for obesity. Are you going for the whole obesity world, or you're going for a small set of overly obese patients and trying there and then expand? And now, as you know, Ozempic, pretty much everyone is using it. For cancer, it's a bit different, but I think the biggest difference you see between a Tesla or any biotech company is the risk that it's within the company, within the technology that you don't know until you're in human clinical trials.
Yeah, I did hear a great Y Combinator talk about how biotech is more like hard tech. So much of the venture capital world, like, hey, you can code the app. Like that's not rockets. It's not rocket surgery, right? They can code the app. Yeah. Can you get millions upon millions and millions of people to give you a recurring payment for multiple years? That is not guaranteed, right? Like, yeah, we can probably make the thing. Can we get the consumer adoption? Can we get everybody to want it from us? Is the risk, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there is a comfort level in that feels like, oh, well, look, they already made it, and they've already got so many people using it, and there's this ability to tell yourself a story that's going to keep going into the millions of customers. Where with hard tech, look at quantum computing, look at, some of the things with the new nuclear reactors that could be super safe and super small. And, these things where it's like, if it works, everyone will want one. Like, you don't have to worry about selling it.
Yeah.
The worry is, can you get it to work, right? It's like, man, when that first quantum computer actually, passes the bar, like there's no question that every government in the world, every giant corporation in the world is going to want it.
Will adopt it, yeah.
Right? When it can do order of magnitudes better than everything else. And plus, none of your data will be encrypted anymore, and you'll have to have one of
Yeah.
any kind of cybersecurity, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's no concern, will you be able to sell this thing? The concern is, can you make it, right? And
Yeah.
that is a different mentality. So I really want to zero in on this science side first.
Yes.
When you think about saying, does the science make sense, right?
Yeah.
Well, nobody can be an expert on everything. And so when you think about whose opinions you're going to listen to in deciding if the science is reasonable, what does that process look like for you to get the right advisors, to talk to the right people inside Bayer, to whatever you're going to do?
Yes. So when we review the company, the whole team looks at it and say, okay, this might have something there. You can start to read some paper and get a gist. So that's the beauty of the job, by the way. One day you're learning, 1 week you're dedicated to an oncology asset and you learn about that. You might not do the investment. The week after you are in genetic disease space, and that's why it's very hectic, but at the same time it gives you a lot of knowledge, but you cannot go deep on everything. So the idea is really, once we have our internal first review and say, okay, I read few paper, I read few articles about this asset. The science kind of makes sense. Therapeutic area is high unmet need. This stuff you can look online or database. It's pretty simple, right? At that point, we go internally and we talk with our internal experts. That someone that's, for example, in oncology, we're going to talk to our team of oncology, both clinician and preclinical, and see if they have a good feeling about this. And also we go for external KOL, key opinion leader. So someone that is an expert in the field and in that specific field. Through interview, we ask tough questions. It's not like, what do you think about this? It's really, our patients are going to adopt this. If so, why? What's the current standard of care? What's the problem? What kind of problem you see with this asset? Sometimes it's, we spend an hour on administration route. Is it an oral? Is an injection? Is sub-Q? Because that makes a difference. If there is already a pill, you cannot really go with the sub-Q unless it's once every 3 months. So the patient actually would like more to have 1 every 3 months injection instead of a pill every day. So there are all these discussions. That's how the science needs to work. At that point, with the data in hand, we start to discuss with the KOL, with internal expertise, and we grasp feedbacks on both sides and trying to understand if this thing might work. And if there is some red flag that comes out of this discussion, we actually discuss with the company. So we asked the CEO or the CSO of the company, did you think about that? Some feedback we received that there is a problem about the administration route, some problem about the toxicity. And most of the time, the company already know those problems. And they say, yes, we know that's how we're doing this experiment to prove that we're different. Or that's why we're trying this new formulation that will give us once every quarter type of treatment. So there is this back and forward. Of course, we cannot do all the company we review because it's over 10 to 12 a week. And not many of them are of interest to us. But once again, once something catches your eye that, okay, this actually might have a good opportunity for patient, then is when you push the button and start to really look into it and get some, I would say superficial is a little bit more than superficial, because once you do 3 or 4 oncology investment, you pretty much know what's going on in the oncology field, and you know the kind of target that people are working on. So this gives you a luxury that you see a lot of potential new deals coming, new potential assets, but you cannot invest in all of them, but at least it's a learning process, right? And sometimes we also see competitive technology from 2 different companies, and we have the luxury to compare them. Which one is actually better? And it takes time. You still need to have a scientific mind and understand what might work and what might not. Our team always look at like, what can go wrong? And is the company making the right experiment to answer those potential comments? But once again, they can answer those one in mice, in rats, in monkey, but at the end of the day, the answer will be in human, right? Because sometimes we saw companies that have amazing data from mouse to monkey, that the monkey is used for tox study usually to see if there is some toxicity related to the drug. Once you go into the clinic with it's a different asset. Are those sick patients? Are those healthy patients? Is it going to work? You don't know. and the only thing you can do is to mitigate the risk and design the clinical trial as precise as possible as you can, and that's not always the case. But yeah, I would say the science process is probably the key, and then we start from the next process that would be is part of our due diligence. Who is coming in? Who are the scientists involved in these? Are high reputational name, are big names, are people that are have done this before. It gives you some kind of comfort. So what we do is find comfort mitigating risk when we can, on the science side and on the team side. And then we need to talk about the syndication and the deal making of the space on the cap table, I call it.
Yeah. What's the bar for somebody getting chosen as a key opinion leader? What are things common about these people? How do they get good enough, or how do you decide, yes, this is a key opinion leader I want to bring in on this one?
So there are a few websites that we use, but usually we look at the background. If is this person a clinician? Do they see if it's a well-known hospital, or is hospital nowhere? There are publication. Is this clinician also looking at potential clinical trial? Those are it's basically the CV based, and sometimes there are a few diseases that there are like 3 or 4 worldwide experts, and you get one of those, you are happy. It's not easy, right? So sometimes they can delay few months to get an interview, and you cannot really look for a deal and hold for 2 months. So we always hope for the best one. Sometimes we go for the second best one. Depends how the disease is well known, how many key opinion leaders there are. But I would say it's usually CV based.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing what some of the websites are that you use to help?
Yeah, we use in the past both AlphaSite and GuidePoints. They are basically 2 websites with it's a subscription based, and you ask basically the agent there how many what kind of technology or expertise they need to have or therapeutic area, and they send you a list. Then you can pick 3 out of 10. They're usually pretty fast. Both websites are pretty good to and don't ask me how much they charge, because it's buyer dealing with them, so I don't know, but the service is pretty good.
And can you give us those 2 one more time?
AlphaSite and GuidePoint.
GuidePoint is the second one.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you say AlphaSite or Alpha Science?
AlphaSite.
Okay.
Yeah, my Italian accent is getting on the way.
So the next question I have is, there's some biotech investors that I trust a lot, that feel like great science is a prerequisite, but it isn't enough. And they spend a lot of time on, is there someone who's a good drug developer on this team? Can you talk about, is that a primary concern to you? Is that a secondary concern to you? How do you think about, is there somebody on this team that has experience getting things through, phase 3 with the FDA?
Yeah. So we have a say that it's like, a great technology in the wrong hands is not going to go anywhere. An average technology in great hands is going to go forward, right? So yes, it's definitely a concern. It's something you can fix along the way. If you're not happy with some of the management, you can add on top of it, or you can basically change parts. But yes, it's definitely a concern, and more the company grows to the stage of a clinical trial, different skills. For example, in the beginning, a good CSO, a good CEO are key to fundraise and to make sure that the science goes well, and all the experiments are done. More the company grows, more you need to talk about the CMO, that is basically, it's going to come in, it's going to be number 2 in the team, straight after the CEO. Another position that usually company hire a bit of a later stage is a CBO, the Chief Business Officer, is someone that really needs to bring a deal home. So you want to talk to Pfizer, to Bayer, to Merck. The CEO alone is not going to be enough. You need also someone that helps you to make the deal, that has done this before, that know personally the people on the other side of the table. And usually you can see that it's relationship based. The deal can come up pretty easily if the 2 people have worked in opposite side of the table worked in the past together, and also they have a good relationship. So there is a lot of these nuance coming later on. But I think that the difference is really how the company grows. So the team needs to change. Sometimes you need to change the CEO because he's a great founder and expert in the science. But now we need someone that knows investor, knows how to talk to investor, knows how to pitch, knows how to go to conference and be a superstar in pitching your idea or the company idea. While in the beginning, you really need someone that set up the company, make sure that everything is working properly. Fundraise maybe a 10 to 20 million. Now we need 200. Is this the same guy? Most of the time, our company faced a CEO that has grown in the space and can actually do it. Some of the time you need to change. But I would say adding the right people at the right time is critical, because CMO and CBO are pretty expensive on both equity and salary and bonuses, right? So it's a big expense that if you don't need it, it's not supposed to be there. The board is not going to be happy to see this amount of money spent on a CMO that is 3 years away from actually doing the real job. There is also an hybrid way where you can hire an external CMO that will work as a consultant, will cost you less, because you don't need a CMO yet, but you are on the phase of getting some clinical trials set up, and then you need some feedback and expertise coming in. So there are ways to fix it. But the capital needs to be deployed towards the best topic of the stage, right? The beginning is science. Second one is going to be clinical trial. That one is, you need the CFO that is expert in IPO, because they need to talk to banks. They need to actually set up the whole IPO process. So different type of skills of late stage, early stage investor are very different. We are mostly early stage now. In the last few years, we have done some Series B and getting some closer to IPO process. But it's different skill set for each company to have the right people in place.
Yeah. So it's funny, the different industries, how the acronyms change, right? Like CIO for so many people is Chief Information Officer.
Investment officer.
And then for others, it's Chief Investment Officer. Or, for so many people, CMO is Chief Marketing Officer instead of Chief Medical Officer.
Medical officer, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Well, let's talk about this. When it comes to a Chief Medical Officer, how do you tell the difference between somebody who looks good versus somebody who actually is good?
Oh, that's a tough one. I can tell you that if someone looks good and then is not good, you can replace it. So that's a safety net. But usually what we do as board, and the board really helps on this side, we come with suggestion of what kind of profile. Sometimes we know the CMO that is looking for something else and wants to change. We know them personally. And so we have this discussion. And then there is a huge round of interview with pretty much the whole board members singularly. So the CMO needs to go through 5 to 7 interviews. We do a reference checking to see if the previous company they were happy with. If they are in a big pharma going to small biotech, we make sure that during the interview we tell him or her, this is not a big pharma company. You're not going to have 20 people reporting to you and doing the job. The whole division department starts with you, finish with you. It's like potentially 3 people. So we need to see, you get a good glass. Sometimes a dinner or breakfast or lunch helps to get the vibe. And then, of course, the board needs to see the man or the woman in action and see, if things are going well. Usually it's pretty rare to make a huge mistake with CMO because they go through a huge screening process. Have they done before? Are they expert in the field? For example, an oncology expert CMO, are we comfortable to put in the genetic disease area? No, probably not. Probably we need to find someone that has that expertise of genetic disease, clinical trial, and knows the field. As you say, you cannot be expert of everything. So the CMO is really important because one failure in the clinical trial design can really ruin the company, because then you need to fundraise again and investors are not going to be happy with the board decision at the time. So the board gets really involved on both CFO, CBO, but especially the CMO. The CMO, it's pretty critical if a company is starting clinical trials, and usually it takes 6 months to 1 year to find a good candidate. So it's the market's definitely hot for CMOs.
Yeah. Is it a similar type of process for chief business officers, or how different is it?
CBO, the skills you're looking for is what kind of deal. Depends what you need, what kind of profile you need. If you have a CEO that is going to be busy fundraising and cannot sit down with the CBO at every meeting, then you want a CBO that has, we say, the Rolodex to actually open the door of many pharma company or many potential acquirers with an email, with a text. Oh yeah, I went for dinner with this guy on Tuesday. I can talk about the company. So this is the type of profile you really want. Some other times the CEO, it's all hands on deck, and he can help on the CEO because he's a former CBO. So he needs someone more junior, and maybe it's not even called CBO. It's going to be VP of BD. And at that point, it's mainly make sure that the paperwork is done right, make sure that the negotiations are done right. It depends really who is the CEO. If the CEO is really someone that has done this several times, he doesn't need a CBO. He can make a call and talk to the head of Pfizer, Sanofi, and Bayer. That's a good profile as CEO to have. Come with a price, but you save some cash on the CBO. So I would say the connection, the opening door, and also one problem we face sometimes is that if we get a BD person from a big pharma and put in a biotech, there is an adaptation time that within 6 months they need to start to realize that there is not a team of people. Once again, it's maybe 2 people, you and someone, that are going to do the work. So some people really get into it because they want to get going. Some others are more used to, have to delegate and have 4 or 5 people. So we need to also see this profile.
Yeah. I'm interested, growing up in the south of Italy, spending your years in the UK, nowadays in Boston. What are some key advantages to biotech in North America versus some advantages for biotech in UK and Europe?
No, UK and Europe is really growing, but the amount of innovation and capital deployed into biotech, especially living between Boston and San Francisco, it's crazy. The amount of capital and people willing to bet on new technology that might change the way we treat patients or we cure patients, it's exponentially bigger in the US. Right now, the UK really punch above their weight because as a small country as they are, I mean, not that small, but compared to the US, they are probably the second best worldwide. There is a huge group between France, Italy, Germany that are really growing the VC. Of course, the numbers are really different. We look in the US for fundraising of 100 million, 200 million. I mean, recently Arch did a 1 billion fundraise for a company. In Europe, we don't see this. We see a more, conservative approach. And I think it's fair to say that they are probably going to come into the US for the potential IPO and going. So we look always at Europe as, this is a good deal, it's cheap, but at one point they need to come to the US, right? Because they need access to more capital. So the big difference I noticed when I was in the UK and Boston is the deal flow. Here we receive 10 to 15 a week. Over there is probably 5 tops, and the other one are not really worth your time because they are not even close to what you want to invest in. Here it's always like, this is a great idea, this is another great idea, and so you actually have to deal with the filtering a bit harder here than in the UK. Italy, I'm going to talk a little bit about Italy as an Italian. I've seen a lot of VC coming up. The government, both government and scientists are now pushing towards, creating companies instead of just licensing it out to someone. So there is some growing. I hope in few years, Italy won't be just a place to call home, but also a place to go and meet some cool company.
Yeah. We were talking before the show about how interested I am in longevity investments. And one of my favorite scientists in the world is Italian Walter Longo and his longevity diet and spending so many times with people who who actually lived over 100 instead of just theories, right?
Yeah, no, there was this study that they did. I don't remember who published it, but basically the one key, because there is in Italy, there is this huge amount of people going over 100 within the Abruzzo. And they show that apart from the physical activity that they need to do the stairs up and down pretty much every day, there is also the sense of community that really helps them to live longer. So healthy food, some activity even basic 20 minutes walk. I notice in the US we don't walk much, right? So when I was in the UK, in London, you pretty much take the train and then walk everywhere. Here it's car, and we need to force the whole family to actually go for a walk, in a nice bike path or something, just to make some kind of movement.
Yeah.
So I noticed that, all the plus 100 plus people in the middle of Italy, it's really good, healthy diet with good quality food, not processed food, make some work, and then the sense of community. They all know each other. They all know their kids, their grandkids, and it really helps.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. I'm interested in the biotech world. This subsector of longevity biotech, like leave off like the crackpots and the crazy people that are trying to create immortality, but I mean like legitimate organizations. Do you feel like the attitude towards that is changing over time? What are your feelings about people working on aging within biotech, or what do you think the larger biotech mafia or the larger biotech community's opinion of the longevity subsector is, and how is it changing over time?
I think it's getting a little bit more credential now. My problem with the whole longevity is what are you trying to fix? Because most of the time we're trying to fix the same problem. So when you define longevity, someone that lives completely healthy over 100, the economic impact of that would be crazy, by the way, because we have too many old people that, it's not going to be good. The recycling of people needs to happen, and it's a natural thing, right? But at the same time, how do you define longevity? Is atherosclerosis something that you would do as, longevity, or is a cardiometabolic disease? Because for me, it's a cardiometabolic disease, but it kills. So same for cancer, not getting cancer.
For me, and this is, I can't, obviously it's a many billion dollars size of sector, and I don't speak for them in any way, form, or
No. It's just me and you, right? It's just between me and you,
the question to me is maybe a larger focus on prevention rather than fixing after like if I said what I'm really interested in is I'm interested in preventative medicines of you're probably going to have to work on something that is a known target because the FDA doesn't recognize aging as a target. So like in almost all cases, you're probably going to have to go after something that is a known target, kidney fibrosis, diabetes, something like this. Well, you're also hoping that it can help with prevention of something else. But let me actually just leave that off for now. For me, the interest is, you're probably doing something where you're working on a problem the patient already has, and the preventative stuff is likely more of the secondary target you're going after with this therapeutic. So if I was to say it differently of like, hey, the business of preventing Alzheimer's, dementia, cancer, heart disease, how is that world thought of by the larger biotech world?
It's a great field to deploy capital in with the hope. The problem is that because we were looking in the past in cancer vaccine, something that you can get before actually deploying cancer, because you might have some genetic modification, some gene that makes you prone to cancer. How do you justify that with reimbursement, the FDA? Are you going to inject something to a patient that is completely healthy, but you are assuming that probably in 5 years, if he smokes or if he drinks too much, he's going to have liver cancer, right? That's the big problem.
I'm totally with you. And like, I look at the idea of like, Ozempic was originally approved as a diabetes prevention drug, right? It's like, hey, you got pre-diabetes, how can we pull you back from the brink? Or you look at like a statin, like, oh, you're getting closer to the risk zone. How do we try and pull you out of the risk zone or stay out of the risk zone as long as possible? That's my initial answer, but I don't have a better answer than that.
Statins, you don't give it to patients that are completely healthy. There is always some kind of problem, right?
That's what I'm saying. For right now, I don't know. I think it's the people who are getting closer to the risk zone, like they're not completely healthy, but they don't have full-blown diabetes yet. They don't have full-blown...
So pre-diabetic patient, for example,
Sure.
Right? So in that case, instead of a potential drugs that will cost them potentially a fortune, why they don't just go for a keto diet where carbs are almost absent and their glycogen level will go. You see, there are ways to go around.
Sure. Okay, we'll use... You know what we got to do? We got to have another call because this is a really fun conversation.
Yeah, because every time
diabetes is maybe the wrong answer. Maybe it's like early onset dementia or something like that.
True.
That there isn't a known like nutrition exercise routine that will just cure it.
The problem is the classification. If you go for early onset dementia, I would probably do an investment in some company that shows that delayed dementia in patient completely reverse it. But I would call it a neurodegenerative disease investment.
Yeah.
I won't call it longevity. It's just the way you call it, right?
Yeah.
But basically, longevity, you can put anything you want in there. But we definitely need another because you don't know how many longevity deals I have to decline because we don't invest in longevity. But if you call it in a different way, it's actually interesting. Okay.
We're totally going to do this.
Yes.
I know you've got to go. But we got to trade some emails and let's do this again.
We'll do it. I'm always happy to talk about longevity. But everyone wants to live up to 100 something. So happy to.
But I think you bring up such a good point. No, but I think you bring up a very important point of know your audience and speak their language.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And
so if I do want to co-invest or attract co-investors from across biotech, I need to use the terminology that responds to the way they sort the world. Right?
100%. And this is one, if I can leave with one message, when we see companies, do your homework, right? Make sure that this investor is something that is looking at the space, is nice to work with, and it can help you. Sometimes money is not enough. Sometimes you need some certain expertise on your cap table. So make sure, for example, if I invest in cell therapy and some company comes and has completely different asset, I would just have to decline because it's not part of our strategy. But that gives a big red flag that those guys didn't even see the website or inform themselves on what we do, right? So I think we need to have another call soon, but on the longevity base. But
Okay, me too. This is so fun. Well, thanks for doing this. Everybody, stay tuned for part 2. Lucio and I are going to do a part 2.
It's going to be a long one. I can see a part 3 too, Jess.
Yeah, me too. Okay, bye everyone.